Oh my god, this show! Okay, episode 4 of Ahsoka has dropped on Disney Plus. We are now halfway through. And so you know the drill. Now I talk about this new episode with the spoilers. So big time spoiler warning here. This was a pretty big episode. If you have not watched it yet, then I advise you not to watch this video yet because I will be talking about what happens in it, what goes down. If you have watched it or you don't care, then of course you are welcome to stay. Alright, disclaimer is done. Let's do this. So I noticed the focus of this episode is the moral conflict of whether or not we even want to go on this mission, this rescue journey to save Ezra, because of the conversation that Ahsoka has with Sabine at the beginning of this episode. She mentioned, she's like, maybe we shouldn't do this because Thrawn is also with Ezra and Thrawn is quite the big threat. Which, yeah, man, it kind of sucks that those two disappeared together, huh? Because it's starting to look like we can't rescue one without rescuing the other. So Ahsoka straight up says maybe Ezra's life is not worth bringing back Thrawn. Which is a really strong moral conflict that I never even thought about considering Sabine Wren's point of view. Like, yeah, Sabine sees Ezra as family. They're, like, really close. We know this because we watch Star Wars Rebels. And I'm sure all we Star Wars fans, we all want Ezra rescued as well. But is it worth bringing back Thrawn? Because let's face it, Thrawn is, like, one of the best Star Wars villains ever, because he's really good at doing what he does. So weigh the pros and cons. Is it worth it? I love that. And when it comes down to it, Ahsoka says, "Can I count on you?" And Sabine says, "Yes, you can." I was like, no, you probably can't. And as we learn later in this episode, yeah, no, she can't. We'll get there. I did like the fact that when those droids attack our main crew, we finally get to see Sabine Wren in her helmet again for the first time in live action. Yeah, her Mandalorian helmet. Another thing that had me going, yeah, that is Sabine Wren straight up. Yeah, that was great. Meanwhile, back with Hera in the New Republic fleet, after being denied by Chancellor Mon Douchebag, she pretty much goes, yeah, alright, I'm just gonna go ahead and help Ahsoka and Sabine anyway. So she brings Chopper and little Jason, and they leave on the Ghost. Oh my god, seeing the Ghost finally in live action. I mean, okay, this is not actually the first time we've seen the Ghost in live action. It did have a little cameo appearance in The Rise of Skywalker, and I think Rogue One as well. But I mean, come on, this is our first real introduction to the Ghost in live action. You know, the main ship from Star Wars Rebels. Home base, you know, the home of Spectre Crew. And I love it, just seeing it in live action just made me feel like a kid again, even though I didn't watch Star Wars Rebels until a couple years ago. But it just made me giddy, sue me. And not only do we get the Ghost, but also Hera and her crew, we get the help of Carson Teva. We remember him. Always great to see him again, you know, nice familiar face. I feel like this guy, like, we can always count on him to come through for us, you know, for the good guys. After all, once a rebel, always a rebel. He's one of the good ones. And so they go off to aid Ahsoka and Sabine. So back on Cetos, we have ourselves a couple of lightsaber fights. This is actually pretty cool. On their way to the map, Ahsoka and Sabine run across Marok and Shin. And so we have Ahsoka versus Marok and a Sabine versus Shin rematch. First, I'll touch on the Ahsoka versus Marok fight because really there were so many theories about Marok going around on the internet. I was like, Marok's not really a character here. He's more of an obstacle than anything else, and this episode proves that right, because Ahsoka does end up killing him in the end. So yeah, Marok dies and no one really cares, because whatever. Sorry, he's not Sam Witwer. It was neat to see that gas come out of him though, because like, what was he? That intrigued me for about 2 seconds. And then there's a Sabine versus Shin rematch, which I will say was pretty intense, because I don't know. I thought maybe Sabine could have been killed in this fight for all I knew. We actually don't know the fates of these characters. And even in the Ahsoka versus Marok fight, I don't know, maybe Ahsoka could have ended up losing a limb or something. We just don't know. But the Sabine versus Shin fight, first of all, it's really well choreographed. And second, this is where we saw this in the trailer, we see Sabine, she tries to use the Force to no avail. It's just not working for her, and that's why we're like, oh my god, Sabine, like this is intense, because I'm on the edge of my seat here. Sabine is just so inexperienced when it comes to this kind of combat. Because, I mean, yeah, we've seen her take on stormtroopers before, you know, in Star Wars Rebels and stuff. But against a trained user of the dark side of the Force with a lightsaber, that's a completely different ballpark. That's why I feel really bad for Sabine throughout this entire show pretty much so far. Because I'm just like, you are out of your depth. It's like starting off a Pokemon game with your starter Pokemon and going right to the 5th gym leader. You're like, I don't have the experience to take this on yet. That's kind of what this is like for Sabine. Not fun. And eventually, Ahsoka gets to the map where she comes across Balin's skull. And we know this fight's gonna be good. But even before they start fighting, their dialogue. Balin starts off, he's like, Anakin spoke highly of you. And I was like, oh shit. Alright, we're going there. So yeah, the two of them do talk about Anakin Skywalker for a little bit, and then they start fighting. And again, this was pretty intense. And again, I was like, Ahsoka could lose a limb here for all I know. I mean, after all, Balin's skull here seems pretty damn skilled. I did like the move Ahsoka did where she jumps off that rock and goes right for his head. I was like, ooh, so close. That was cool. But when Sabine and Shin show up, Balin actually defeats Ahsoka. He doesn't kill her, which probably would have been the smart move, but he probably didn't want to kill her because of the sympathy we know he has. We saw that a couple episodes ago, where he was like, it'd be a shame to kill her. There are so few Jedi left. So he just sends her off the cliff. Alright, well, fine. I mean, of course I'm not complaining. Ahsoka's still alive. That's good. But then what happens next? This is really the scene where I was like, Oh my god. Oh my god, the writing here. Because before Ahsoka sent off the cliff, Sabine has the map and Ahsoka yells at her, she's like, destroy it! And this is where, like I said, Sabine can't be counted on. Because she doesn't destroy it, she's hesitant. But understandably so. And so Baylan actually successfully persuades Sabine to give him the map to Thrawn. I was like, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. That makes Sabine a very flawed human character, which means she's written really well. Because what she did was very natural, very human. It reminds me of what Star-Lord did in Infinity War. You know, I mean, that character might get shit for it from the fans, but no one can blame them. Sabine wants to see Ezra again. We all do. What would you do in her shoes? And this doesn't mean that she's now on the dark side. It just means she chose the response that she thought would work best for her, you know? And even afterwards, when they bring her aboard the Eye of Sion, she's in handcuffs. So yeah, she's not a villain now all of a sudden. That would be stupid. So yeah, I do love that this happened, but at the same time, it just makes me really sad. Because I was like, well, damn it. The villains are winning now. That sucks. I really felt that in this episode. So I seriously gotta give props to that. And by the time that Hera and the Ghost and their crew get there, it's already too late. Now the villains are all ready, they're all packed up, and they jump to hyperspace with Sabine on board. Oh damn. So yeah, it looks like they are on their way to go get Thrawn. And Ezra, maybe. Holy shit. However, I will note little Jason's line right here, because he says, I've got a bad feeling. And of course I have noticed in all these shows that we've gotten in this era, no one has really said that classic Star Wars line, I have a bad feeling about this. And that has been bothering me. It's been a staple of Star Wars since day one, you know? So I was relieved to hear it make half a return in this show anyway. Hey, it's better than nothing. But then, the end of this episode. Holy fuck. So we know that Ahsoka's gonna be okay because she's Ahsoka Tano. Of course she survives the fall, but she wakes up in this weird place. I was like, holy shit, is this the world between worlds? The world between worlds we remember from Star Wars Rebels. And honestly, it was like one of my least favorite things about that entire show. Because it's like a time travel type place, you know? It's what it sounds like. A gateway world between different points in time and space, I think is what it is, really. So again, I'm like, alright, tread lightly here, show. I don't want Star Wars to delve into time travel here. And I'm pretty sure all Star Wars fans, no matter how toxic the fandom is, are all in agreement on that. That being said, though, I will say it is pretty cool to see the world between worlds in live action for the first time. That's neat. And as if that wasn't enough, we then hear this distant echoey voice say, hello, Snips. And immediately I was like, it's Anakin Skywalker. Sure enough, Ahsoka turns around and there he is. Hayden Christensen returning once again as Anakin Skywalker. Oh man, some shit's about to go down right here. But then after the shock wore off, I noticed that Anakin is not, it doesn't look like he's a Force ghost like he should be. Cause, you know, Darth Vader, he died. We know this. So, like, what's going on here? Is he a memory or something like Han Solo was in Rise of Skywalker? I have no idea, but we will get some explanation next week. I really, really hope so anyway. But that's where this episode ends. It just cuts to black and I was like, oh my god, the shock. I love that. I love it when shows like this drop bombs on us like that. That's how you hook 'em. So in the end, this 4th episode of Ahsoka was pretty damn exciting. I loved it. I loved the lightsaber fights. They were intense. The dialogue's still great. Yeah, the writing, especially with Sabine, it's really good. And now we are halfway through the show, so now things should really start kicking into high gear. Can't wait. It's gonna be awesome. So Ahsoka, Part 4, Fallen Jedi. Have you watched it yet? What are your thoughts on it? And what are your theories and predictions for next week? What are your questions about Anakin? Really, I just want to know, why do you think he doesn't look like a Force ghost here? So whatever you think, go ahead and leave a comment, please. And of course, thank you for subscribing. Peace!